Hello and welcome to the East Lampeter Township Public Meeting. All participants are now informed that this meeting is being recorded. This meeting is also being offered virtually utilizing Zoom, which is a cloud-based platform for remote video and audio conferencing. The Zoom application is free to the public. The general public is therefore able to join the meeting by connection through the internet or by calling in by phone. The public is also able to observe the meeting on the Township's YouTube channel. Please continue to check the Township website calendar for any updates related to these public meetings. Agendas for these public meetings will also be available on the Township's website. Please be reminded that this meeting is being video and audio recorded and will be posted to the Township's YouTube channel for viewing. The meeting will now proceed with the chairman calling the meeting to order and identifying all other members present in the meeting room and those joining the meeting via Zoom. The chairman will then confirm those members joining by Zoom can be heard.
Okay, welcome to the May meeting of the East Lampeter Sewer Authority. And members present, Brent Stallsus, Todd Stump, myself, Rick Robinson, Vinod Patel, Ralph Hutchinson from the township, and Tara Hitchens from the township. I invite you to join us in the pledge of the American flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we've had the minutes for a couple weeks now, so unless there's any additions or corrections, they're going to stand approved as written. Treasurer's report. Sanitary sewer.
Rick, I have checks that need paid, the sanitary sewer. The amount of $3,723.60. And the checking account balance as of the end of April, amount of $13,023.87. I've got the requisitions here for, does he need to give them or is that what he's going to ask for? Looks like there's only one HRG. Is that something we want
Yeah, we might as well approve that.
to touch?
Yeah.
So
One requisition, it's 03.
03595 and the total amount of $14,921.75 payable to Herbert, Rollin, and Rubik. Charge you.
Motion to pay the bills and requisitions for the sewer authority.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Stormwater bills.
Rick, I had stormwater bills that total $15,520.68.
Motion to pay the bills for stormwater.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Tara Hutch, the 13,500 to Doug's Tree Service. What was that?
Okay, under old business, sanitary sewer. It's now for run upgrade. Do we need,
We need Matt.
okay,
to-
we'll
to
come
really
back
talk
to that
about
if he gets here. Treehouse discussion, is that in the same situation or do you give the update on that? Hutch?
Yeah, I don't think Matt would have any more. At this point, from what I know, Treehouse is waiting on the delivery of the structure that they want to put on the sanitary line.
Is that why there's
metering.
no action up here?
They're waiting for that structure to be delivered. So they're still weeks away from that coming. So that would be the next step. They did get their land development plan approved. I believe it's been recorded. No, it's not been recorded, sorry. They're in the process of recording that. And as soon as that's recorded, then they can get their building permit for the small addition that they need to make to that building.
Is there any other old business for sanitary sewer? Old business for stormwater, Greenfield Road Amtrak Storm Sewer Project.
Right, so last month you approved the bid and we're getting that contract in place with the contractor. We separately engaged the tree service to clear the easement down through there to try to keep things rolling along. And the shed on the Arcabolano property has been moved, so that's out of the way now. So we hope to give notice to proceed to the contractor here shortly, and they can order materials and get things going down there. Materials are going to take some time to come in. We've been told the pipe is 20 weeks out. So it's going to be a little while till we see some action down there.
Are you seeing that everything's far out, but are they holding to the dates they give you? Maybe a better question for Charlie.
Yeah, Turner might have a little better idea on that, but yeah, I think
We haven't had a pre-construction meeting
Yeah.
yet, so we haven't had a timeline laid out for us at this point.
I think kind of general with the township and projects going on.
yeah, there was a time specified in the bid contract, but we haven't heard anything at this point that would indicate that they're troubled by that.
Any other old business under stormwater? Okay, I'm gonna move to new business. Under sanitary sewer. Cedar Acres.
I can't remember whether we reported this to you before or not, but it was discovered a few months ago now that there were some roof gutters, drains, leaders from Cedar Acres that are going into their sanitary sewer system. Of course, their sanitary laterals that come out of that property, which is in the city of Lancaster, not in East Lampeter, but their laterals connect into ELSA interceptor that goes down through that property. So apparently there's been a lot of rainwater going directly into the sanitary from that property for
A long time.
many years. So the city has been working with the owner to get those connections removed, disconnected. They've allowed us to be on site to observe and verify. They were supposed to be finishing that work sometime this week. We haven't heard that whether or not it's complete yet. I did have a exchange with Matt about our ability to sort of calculate, per 1 inch of rain, about how much stormwater would have been contributed. So we'll go through that exercise so that we have some information to go back to the city with to say,
We
That-
get charged for this much.
right, what happens with the billing there is that there's a flat per EDU, per dwelling unit credit against our meter reading, which is downstream in Bridgeport. So, of course, that EDU count doesn't anticipate that we've got a whole lot of rainwater in addition. So we'll see how that conversation goes with our friends from the city, but we're going to have that conversation. So that's what's been happening at Cedar Acres.
How was it discovered that this was the case? I mean, who would admit to it?
It was just kind of by happenstance. I think there was somebody, contractor or vendor was on the property and was doing something and discovered it and sort of, I don't know, either accidentally or intentionally called us when it was discovered, perhaps thinking that it's in East Lampeter. And our guys went down, checked it out, said, yeah, you got rain gutters connected in. So we contacted the city, and that's how it kind of got the ball rolling.
Do they have any kind of detention basins down there or anything like to collect any of that? I mean, probably back when that was built was what, in the 70s?
Yeah, I think it was mid 70s vintage. So yeah, there. I couldn't say. I haven't been on that property in a long time, so I don't think there's any stormwater facilities on that. If they would have been built, they would have been built for flooding concerns to reduce the rate of runoff and not anything else.
But there's going to be something that happens now that this water ain't going into the sewer lines. I mean,
Our meter won't spin as fast.
well, I'm just saying though too, the water's got to go somewhere. That
It's going to go into the tributary that runs down through there and ultimately goes into the Conestoga. So, better it goes there than in the sanitary. But yeah, I mean, if it ends up causing them, internal stormwater flooding type difficulties, I guess, we'll have to figure out some solution to that.
I mean, it could very well go into some, apartments and stuff like that. I mean,
It's going to be, running over ground somehow.
Yep. Okay, city's flow monitoring project.
We've talked about this a little bit. The city had been proposing to do some metering, monitoring of the interceptor that goes down just south of Lincoln Highway through Tennyson and Susan and, down toward Bridgeport. And that was sort of the last of the larger interceptors on their system that they hadn't done a whole lot of inspection work since the time it was put in, really. So we had concerns about the way they were going about it because the flow that goes down through that interceptor and ultimately into the Conestoga Gardens pumping station, roughly 82% of what goes into Conestoga Gardens is the capacity that we have in that system. So the monitoring, the metering that they wanted to do essentially would be paid 82% by Delta. And really what they're, well, I shouldn't say it that way, but it appeared to us that what they were really doing was trying to do an inflow infiltration study of their system. A little bit of our system as well, but there's some of Suburban Lancaster's system that comes in and ties into that interceptor as well. So we were going to get saddled with 82% of the cost, but really most of the benefit was going to be for the other systems. So we expressed our concerns. We suggested that what they should do first is inspect the interceptor, go in with a camera and other equipment to really look and see if the interceptor is in good shape. Because their ultimate concern would be that the interceptor is in bad shape and it needs to be replaced or lined or whatever. You gentlemen will probably remember a number of years ago, we had a part of that interceptor just south of Lincoln Highway collapse, and we had to go in and replace pretty significant run of that. And then after doing that, we came back in and lined a portion of that and a little bit farther down into the Tennyson meter pit area to try and make sure that that was in good shape. So they're really talking about the area that would be west of that.
How far is that from there on down then?
Yeah, it goes all the way to the river
Okay,
from there. So distance wise, I'm not sure.
3/4 of a mile, maybe? Half a mile?
Yeah, probably. So we made those suggestions. Ultimately, the city said, no, we don't want to do it that way. We want to do it our way. And they have started. They went ahead and put it out to bid and are hiring a metering company to come out, put meters in, temporary meters in some of the manholes in various places and throughout the system. And we've basically taken the position that, well, we haven't agreed to sharing in these costs. So, whatever you're doing, but we're not agreeing with these costs being 82% ELSA. So they said, well, we still want to do it. Their interest is that they want to capture meter data over the wet period of the year. So they wanted to get them in as quickly as they could, thinking, spring rains. And so they're going to have them in the ground probably for 5-6 months to collect all that data. And then at some point in time, we'll have to figure out who's paying for what as part of this. I'm not exactly sure how we're going to figure that out since they went ahead and did it in a different way, but that'll come up at some point. Larry's been going out with the city employees as well as their contractor whenever they're touching a part of our system, going in a manhole or inspecting something. We're there when that happens. So that's where that project is.
Is that any different from the next thing on the?
Well, it's kind of related. We have on that part of the system that I was just talking about, our Tennyson meter pit, which, the purpose of that is to measure, how much flow is coming from East Lampeter going into the city system. Where that meter pit is located, there's also upstream of that, in other words, coming in before the meter, portions of the city's system that go into the interceptor. So that portion of their flow goes through our meter. And just like with Cedar Acres, there's a EDU count that gets credited on a flat per EDU against our meter amount. So that's how the billing is handled. So I asked Matt, and I was hoping Matt would be here to help.
He's here now.
Oh, he's here now. Good. If it would be possible to, relocate that metering point upstream so that, we'd only meter our flow and then the city's flow would come in after that point. So it's possible, apparently. It's expensive, So I'm not sure that we really want to do that. I guess the other alternative, which I haven't talked to Matt about, would be to try to convince the city that they ought to put a meter on their portion of the system before it enters into the system where we then meter, so we know exactly how much flow they're contributing rather than a flat EDU credit. That's thinking Hutch things. So I don't know if that's something that we really want to pursue or not. But maybe Matt can expand on that.
We already got it.
We got reports.
We got the reports.
I didn't know he's bringing visuals, but they're always helpful.
So this was an exhibit from the project where we had lined the Tennyson Interceptor after there was that collapse. So there was a collapse that was up here that occurred that was replaced with PVC piping as an emergency contract. And then this was the contract to line the remainder of the interceptor downstream to the metering chamber. So here's where the metering chamber currently is located. Off of Tennyson Drive. There's a stream that runs down here. It's located parallel to that. This line here is a city facility. So it picks up that Poets Corner area and conveys city flow into here. And then these are also city customers. And there's 2 laterals that tie in, but these lots are now being developed. So you're going to have probably about 5 additional lots in here being connected into the system. So as Hutch was saying, the one thought would be, could the flow meter chamber be relocated from here to a point someplace upstream of where the city's connections are located? Or, we do have individual lateral connections, but there is this gravity line here. There's a potential that the city can install a meter there. With flow metering, the more flow you have, the better. So if the flow is such on a gravity line that it goes from periods of no flow to periods of flow, it becomes a challenge to meter because you need to have some flow in there for the sensor to pick up. So I don't know how feasible it'll be for long-term purposes for the city to meter that. Just given, I think I counted up and have the numbers, I can look and see, but I think it's definitely less than 100 homes that tie into that section. Yeah, probably. So, and previous flow metering experience showed something along those lines there. You're going to have periods of time where there's no flow going into that, and having metering that's accurate is probably going to be a challenge. So then the other thought is, can you take this here, relocate it? Is that worth the expense of doing that? So with flow metering, there's different types of meters that can be installed. This meter is located in its own concrete vault. It has a flume that's in there, and that flume has a defined flow rate per height. So there's a meter in there that measures the depth of the water going through the flume. And based upon that depth, it has a corresponding flow. Those are great meters. They're accurate as long as the water's flowing through the meter. If you have a situation where there's a blockage or something occurs downstream of the flume that causes water to back up, you're going to get a higher level in the flume, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you actually have that flow, that volume of flow going through it because of that restriction downstream. So the other type of meter that can be utilized is what's called an area velocity meter. So where the flume looks at depth, the area velocity looks at depth of flow and the velocity of the flow. And it uses those two items to calculate the amount of flow going through it. So if there was a restriction downstream, the velocity would drop, but your level would increase, and you would actually measure the flow that's going through it at that point. Now, I don't know, given the size of pipe, how often there are restrictions downstream, but we do know that there's at least probably one time in the past year or two. I know when the city was looking for flow information, I think for SLAS's purposes, that the meter was pegged out. So was the meter maxed out because of the flow going through it, or because of some restriction downstream? We're not sure.
Would it make any sense, Matt? Would the city be willing to pay to move, put a new meter up there and leave this alone instead of trying to relocate it?
Well, I think if whoever's paying for it, we wouldn't really move this. We'd put a new one in and then tear out the flume.
So it's all, with the flow metering, with gravity flow, it's all about flow characteristics. You don't want to have turbulent water. You don't want to have splashing occurring where your meter's located so that you can get accurate readings. So it may be possible that at one of these spots here, in an existing manhole, you may have adequate characteristics of flow. You could get a meter installed in the existing manhole and just get added to it. Or you may have to look at actually adding another structure someplace else in one of these lines. Adding the cost of the structure, your cost goes up. With any of these spots, getting power to it and getting the signal installed so that it can be tied back into the SCADA system for recording of all the flow as well.
How much cost-wise are we paying if we don't monitor that?
There's no way to know. You know, if there is a lot of I&I coming into the system, it's not being measured, except at the meter. So the meter thinks it's sanitary flow, but it could be a lot of I&I. There's no way to know that.
That's what I mean. If we know or an approximate cost, what it's costing us for that treatment, then it might offset for us to maybe put that meter there. Then you have the data to tell the city that, hey, this is from our flow, but this isn't I&I.
I mean, there's a chance that the metering that they're doing now, the project that I was talking about, will capture some of that information. And we might, assuming that they share it with us, we might know something about what the I&I characteristics are. Right. I mean, that's going to be the negotiation with, all right, you did your project, you got information. You want us to pay X% of it. Well, we're not, unless you pay this much, we're not going to deliver the information. There's going to be a back and forth here.
And you can do some temporary metering if you would like. So just like the city's metering their flows. Temporary flow companies can put in a flume inside the pipe that's there for a temporary basis. And that creates a restriction in that pipe such that you can measure that during low flow periods of time. So there is a way it can be metered, but because of that restriction, it's not something we want to have in there for a long period of time. So looking at an I&I study, if this was your system, you want to say how much, is that basin really a problem? There is a way that you can meter that to see if it truly is. But that's not one area that the city had flow meter installed, but they were proposing to put a temporary one up here, and they were going to have another one downstream of this meter as well. But this was one we had to really question. So if they're going to keep it, you could look at what is the flow here, what's the flow there. And the difference is basically what's being contributed by this pipe here and the other connections.
So I guess the way I would answer that would be to say, after the city gets through this analysis, and, maybe we have more information, we may come back to the authority and say, well, it doesn't make sense to put in a different meter in place. Or, well, we think it might really be beneficial. So we'll get some more information on that, bring it back to you.
Any other new business under sanitary sewer?
So the other item I have, and that's the other exhibit that's up there, is the Oaks pump station eliminations. So we've looked at exhibits, conceptual design options here for elimination of the Oaks 1 pump station and the Oaks 2 pump station. So these are large versions of what's in the engineer's report. So here, just for location, you have 30. This is the Oaks 1 pump station, Pennsylvania State Police building. And then you have the shopping center here. So currently, flow comes from the Oaks development into the pump station. The pump station then pumps it from this point here and discharges it out into the gravity system. From the gravity system, it runs down to 30, and then from 30, it heads down to the Mill Creek Interceptor, which then winds its way back around and comes down to the Fertility Pump Station. So the option to eliminate this pump station would be a gravity sewer extension, which would start at the pump station, and then the point of connection would be downstream here. So currently, there is gravity sewer within the shopping center here. It serves the shopping centers, and there's another line up here that serves the restaurants. So these lines come down together, and then the line extends along the face of the shopping center, and then runs down and ties into the system. There's also a stream that runs here, and it becomes a pipe stream when it crosses 30. And there's a 5-foot diameter corrugated metal pipe that extends under the parking lot, comes down, and daylights right down here. So that pipe is already in place. Initially, we had looked at, is there a way we could jack and bore across 30 with a gravity sewer line here? But we don't think there's enough space between the Red Lobster and the existing storm sewer pipe. So that necessitates the need to bring the sewer system or the proposed sewer line in between the McDonald's and the Red Lobster. So what we're looking at would be a gravity line extended down from Oaks, a jack and board crossing. So it's a sewer pipe and a steel casing pipe. So they actually put a bore pit on one side of 30 and a bore receiving pit on the other, and drive a steel pipe underneath the ground, underneath 30, and then run a sewer line inside of that. And for purposes of this study, we just kept the sewer pipe in the same location as the existing because there's already an easement at that spot. So if you're looking at it from a depth perspective, you start at the Oaks pump station up here, and then we go downhill from there. And the question was, how far downstream do we need to go until we tie back into the existing system? So coming downstream, we hit the 60-inch pipe, and DEP classifies that, even though it's in a pipe, as a stream. So they require at least 3 feet of clearance. So when we hit that pipe, it's going to force the line deeper. And, but we do have depth here. So in essence, we need to replace basically from the manhole here up to Oak Street for purposes, or the Oaks 1 pump station for purposes of that installation. So We've put together an estimate, includes bypass pumping because we do have to maintain flow here while we're doing some of the work. Put an estimate for the jack and board crossing across Route 30, as well as the various open cut crossings. Because of the depth of the line, there are certain sections that instead of putting in a PVC pipe, we would put in ductile iron. It's a stronger material there because of the added loading that's on the pipe. So it's a combination of PVC, ductile iron pipe, the board crossing. So the construction subtotal we have here is 816,000. I had also included, and it didn't print, at the stage we were on, we added 20% contingency on top of that. So add 20% for contingency for an estimated construction total project. There could be other additional project costs such as easements that would be needed for any type of compensation for obtaining easements for the additional sewer main through the project, and then also engineering, design, legal, administrative costs associated with it. At this stage, I would say, for a placeholder number, you're probably 25%, something along those lines of construction. Just for engineering and as all the other soft costs that go along with the project.
What's the other?
On top of that,
What was the figure behind it? For the second oaks?
yes.
So
So the other is for the elimination of the Oaks 1 pump or the Oaks 2 pump station. So again, this is Route 30 here. Oaks 2 collects another portion of the Oaks development. And there's a force main from Oaks 2 currently, which extends along here and then drops into the gravity system, which then flows to Oaks 1. So Oaks 1 pumps all the gravity it's tied into plus Oaks 2. So to eliminate Oaks 2, now what we're looking at is an extension of the gravity system across 30. This is Volleyball Corner. So this flow here extends down and flows down towards the Walmart, yes. So what we looked at this area would be another jack and board crossing across 30, and then gravity sewer extension to tie into the existing system here. So you can see that, this is 30 here. So they 370. So you're almost 35 feet deep under Route 30 here because it's so built up. But again, contractor would need access here to access the right of way, install the sewer main, and get equipment in to jack and bore across 30. And then also additional easement here to extend the sewer main. Now, it looks like in this portion of the development, there's a stormwater easement, and a stormwater pond. So the one thing we'll have to look at there would be where we can install the sewer main that we don't compromise the stormwater pond itself, and what that distance is needed. So currently this line's shown as straight. Perhaps it has to come out and go around that pond or something along those lines. But we do have fall available to us to account for that. Now, because we're not in the parking lot area, this is all vegetative areas, we can get away with utilizing the existing backfill material to backfill the trench. Whereas in that section there, because we're in the parking lot, other roadways, we'd have to, all the material that's removed when they excavate the trench, you'd have to put stone back in, which drives the cost of that up, as opposed to this project here. That project's also about twice the length of this extension. And the same 20% for contingency and 25% for soft costs. to be added.
There are overtime savings to the township for doing this.
Mm.
So, you do have costs for staff stopping by the pump stations on a daily, stopping by the pump stations and check on them. There are electrical costs that it takes to operate the stations. You can take a look and say, what would be the return on investment for doing these based upon, what the current operational and maintenance costs are. So if we are able to calculate those, what staff time, how much money do they put into the stations for new pumps, what's budgeted each year for that, you could take a look at it and say, how many years would it take to return our investment on this project?
Is that what you'd like us to do? Go through that calculation process?
I think we would need to know that.
I think that makes sense. Get some kind of handle on the annual operating cost savings for books 1 and 2.
The other factor to play into it, it's not just operational, but the Oaks 1 station has experienced some sewer overflows. So is that a result of additional I&I getting into the system in that area? Somehow it's getting in. There's extraneous flow getting into the system during storm events. And it's causing the Oaks 1 pump station to overflow. I think there was 2 or 3 of those events last year. So, there would need to be some other additional costs. One option was looking at additional force main. So perhaps putting another force main to tie from the pump station up to this point here to handle and pump more flow. But it's also investigating the system to try to see where that flow is coming in at. That would be the first step.
Is it also worthwhile to look at the potential replacement, life expectancy of the parts and pumps and
Correct.
When we'd be looking at replacing those?
So I know they were looking at actually getting a replacement pump right now for the Oaks 1 station. And I think that was somewhere in the neighborhood of $10,000, just to buy another one. But when you're looking at 10,000 versus $1 million,
Against $1 million?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, Matt, there would be a cost if we were to do the I&I investigation and try to
correct,
seal those leaks.
correct.
Because what I'm hearing is that it's mostly the overflow is a result of the I&I getting into the system.
Correct. And it's a question is that I&I, it's finding the location. And is the I&I in the sewer main? Is it coming from manholes or is it coming from the laterals? And if it's coming from the laterals, now you're dealing with the private property owners and their responsibility to fix their lateral. But each amount of I&I that you can remove from the system, it saves you on pumping costs because it gets pumped essentially by Oaks 2, by Oaks 1. It goes down to Fertility Pump Station, gets pumped again. And then it's the whole treatment cost that the city has as well. So there are benefits of getting the I&I out because it's less pumping, less treatment costs there, but it does take some effort to locate it.
Those benefits you have, whether or not most of those benefits you have, whether or not you're pumping or if you eliminate the pump stations, it's still always good to get rid of the I&I.
Right. But we pay for treatment of that too,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Because of the flow.
Yep. We had also, this sort of came up when Matt had suggested that there might be some grant funding coming available for capital type projects. So I think that's something else to consider is to, if we can get, OPM, other people's money, that might change the calculation on to do or not to do. So.
So do you have a general feel on what the chances would be on getting this investment back in a realistic time frame, amount of years? Or?
I would say for Oaks 1, it's probably a long period of time.
Long meaning?
It could be like 40 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something along those lines there. Yep. Oaks 2, that dollar figure there is substantially lower. I'm not sure how much, what the electricity costs are, things along those lines. I mean, that's probably a shorter period of time. But, it's with as Hutch said, the federal infrastructure money that's being released, we're waiting to see how that is going to be doled out and what programs. But that's where this came about, was with that possibility. It was something that was included and discussed about 20 years ago when the 537 plants and components of that were being considered as a potential option.
So we're gonna check into some of them costs. Is that what we're gonna do?
I can ask Larry if he has an idea of what the annual O&M costs would be for those stations. And, that would factor in, staff's time for checking the stations, maintaining them, plus the utility costs. And if they budget a certain amount for equipment replacement funds each year.
And then would we be able to get a handle of some sort of a cost for the I&I elimination that's in that system? What cost it would cost us to go through and have any idea?
We have some temporary meters ourselves, and I had talked with Charlie about, trying to do some of our own metering in there to get a feel for it. I don't know whether we've done that yet or if it's on the schedule to be done. I'll have to inquire about that. But if we wanted to hire, a metering company to really, do a detailed analysis of it, we could probably come up with an estimate of how much that would cost.
Because first we would need to know how much flow is getting into the system. And then number 2 would be is the cost to fix those areas where the I&I is getting in. So it'd be 2 different costs, right?
Definitely. Yeah. The analysis is a lot easier to estimate, what the cost of the analysis would be. Until that's done, you have no way of knowing, what the repairs would be. And
there's different types of investigation. If it's a broken pipe that has groundwater that's coming into it, you can, if you run a camera through a line, you can see that as long as the groundwater's up. If it's sump pumps that are tied into the system, you may not see that until you have a storm event, the groundwater's up, and that's just clear water coming through a lateral. If there are broken cleanout caps in a yard, there's, depending upon where the traps are on the sewer lateral, if the trap is behind the cleanout caps, you can actually induce smoke into the system. They use a blower and they smoke test the system. They pump smoke into the sewer main, it goes into the manholes. Pumps smoke into the manhole, goes into the sewer main up the laterals, and you can actually see if you have broken cleanout caps and other type of methods and identify where those are. So there's multiple tools in the toolbox to help identify and target these locations.
If we'd have done that in Cedar Acres, we'd have thought all the buildings were on fire because there'd have been smoke coming out the roof leaders.
Okay, is there any other new business under sanitary sewer? Let's go back here to this old business, Stauffer Run upgrade.
The contractors are still gathering submittals for the pump station. And we've reviewed a number of them. However, the one we're still waiting on is from the electrical contractor. It's for the MCC components. Contractors getting, they're purchasing them through Square D, that Square D company. And they're waiting on Square D to put the package together so they can submit it to us. Last week when we had our job conference, contractor was told, hey, we'd have it this week. And then Square D had a company-wide training event for 3 days and didn't get it. So haven't seen it yet this week. They're saying they're pushing it, but hopefully next week we have it. If not this week, we can review that and turn it around. But that's probably the longest lead item right now with what we've been told. So it's probably still about 5 to 6 months out until that comes in upon review. Approval of it. Pumps, the Gorman Rupp pumps have been reviewed and approved. Other, piping components. The contractor submitted right now the products for repairing the pipe in the air valve chambers. So we're going to be reviewing that material. That's something that can occur here this summer. That's not contingent on anything going on at the station. So while they have good, dry, hot weather, they should be able to install that. The code review company for the township permits, no issue with the electrical permit. There was one item they wanted to see on the structural building permit, which was identifying the design code, what year the design code is being, have that identified on the drawings. So we're making that change and we'll submit that to them this week. So that should get the permits released and everything's in the contractor's hands. Nothing we can really do to push Square D at this point. Unfortunately.
Do you have any other old business that you wanted to talk
The
about?
only question I had was if you had approved the requisition or not.
I did.
I took care of it.
Okay,
I'll bill
thank you.
I'll bill HRG accordingly.
Thank you.
Hour minimum, right?
What's that?
I don't bill under an hour.
An hour minimum? Okay.
Okay, then we're going to go to new business under stormwater, the update on the MS4.
The hack restoration, stream restoration project is moving forward with DMA working on the design. That's 2,140 linear feet of stream bank restoration. And we're working with a few private landowners with private-public partnership to purchase MS4 credits as they retrofit their stormwater basins. So we're looking forward to those private-public partnerships. In addition, Charlie Thomas and I are meeting with a group called I2 Capital on a potential revolving fund for Lancaster County, which would assist in constructing agricultural BMPs within the 1 mile boundary outside the urban area that can still feed into the watersheds and sewer sheds and count for MS4 credits. We would be the guinea pig for the county in that particular instance.
Maybe Trailblazer would be. The other thing that I would mention, which you probably all saw, is toward the end of April, I think it was, EPA put out a statement that they weren't happy with Pennsylvania's plan, and they're basically saying they're going to drop the hammer on Pennsylvania. So that means that Lancaster County's going to be even more in the crosshairs and microscope. I think it, at least in my mind, adds to the importance of us making sure that we get our pollution reductions completed, that we continue to operate our MS4 programs and getting the 6 MCMs under control as best we can, and document everything, because they're going to come looking. Whether we're the ones that get the visit or not, I don't know, but they're gonna be here.
Any other new business under stormwater?
I do have something, Rick. Been ongoing questions with the township, the development up the street here, Meadows of Highland, the stormwater bill on. So if you'd head out of here right before you get to the, it's on the left. And I had been talking to Kevin at the township and tried to set up time to get through Kevin, was maybe trying to get together with Tara and Nor Hutch to talk about it, but I'm busy, they're real busy, so we couldn't find the time. So I thought, well, coming here tonight, I said something briefly to Tara. If she mentioned, if it was all right if I brought it up now, it was all right with that, was my decision.
I indicated it's a personal bill, so it's.
Yeah, I agree, but I'd like the board, the three gentlemen here beside me, maybe to hear some things around it there. So I received the bill for the stormwater for that development. I hadn't had anything really to do with the development as far as from construction or being on any board in there, and up to probably 5 years. I'd have to check exactly how long, but I had maintained, and the township's currently sending the sewer bills to the property management company, which I believe is Esquire, who wasn't the company when I was there. So I had always maintained that shouldn't the stormwater bills be going there also. I had reached out to Kevin about that originally, and originally I asked, because I do have, like my brother and I, our company, we have 3 buildings that we had always maintained as part of the HOA in there. And I reached out originally to Kevin Hostetter, if possible, to whatever technology, split this out so we knew what part of the stormwater we should be paying. And then I had got an email from Tara saying that they wouldn't split it out, which is fine, but I still don't understand that kind of, just by saying that, it kind of contradicted that the sewer bills and the stormwater bills are going to a different place. So I had, as of August of last year, I had sent an email to Kevin, and I said, and I referenced Tara's email that she had sent me. I mentioned that doesn't it make sense that they would send the sewer bills and the stormwater bills to the same place? Kevin replied, yes, I believe that to be correct. So I kind of thought that was maybe the end of it. Maybe they would send the bills then both to the property management company at the Esquire, but then I still kept receiving them. And to me, it's really not about the money and all this. It's more kind of a principle. I can't follow the logic behind it. So now the bills, the stormwater bill is going to the property management company. But there's some, and the property management company's not arguing about the total amount owed as the bills would have been quarterly, but they asked me to reach out to the township if the penalties on that could be erased, because they maintain, that's the first bill they ever got. And I wasn't sure we were going to talk about this tonight, so I didn't reach out to back the property management company to see if they were able to be here. But I guess that's, I don't understand why there would still be penalties to the property management company. And I think that's all they were looking to do, is have the penalties waived on that, which did end up to be pretty substantial in this.
Why would the township split that up even to start with? Why wouldn't it just go into the management company? I mean, why
My
would it went-
recollection is that the property tax records indicate that the ownership is still stumped. And so when we set up the billing arrangements, they were being, all the bills were being sent to the owners. So that's the reason the bill was going to Todd and Kurt.
So
And continued to be so until recently. But the bills weren't paid. So
Yeah, we never,
you
I never paid a bill, and I had never met anybody from this Esquire Management, and I wanted to get the billing straight, and even if I kept getting the bill to drop it off to them, I thought, well, who's this guy? Do we really owe this type thing? So that's why I thought it's more official coming from the township. That was kind of what I maintained over the last, well, since the stormwater billing was put into effect.
I'm still not quite understanding. If the sewer bills were getting sent to the management company,
So with the condo association and the arrangements there, and I don't know when transferred from developer to condo association, and all that process, which you guys are fully familiar with, I'm sure, but there's the common ownership of the condo association and the buildings, the roofs, the parking lots, everything that is measured as impervious area is, the responsibility of whoever is in charge of the condo association. At least initially, as we were billing the property owner, had the property owner come to us and said, hey, we'd like the bill to go to somebody else. We've honored that with a variety of property owners out there, but that request wasn't made until recently.
Well, even if we go back to August of last year, I clearly said that to Kevin. I've got the emails here. You're welcome to see them about sending them to the same, and he agreed with me that nothing had changed.
We're happy to review it. And as Todd
Yeah.
said, Kevin had reached out to try to set up a meeting with Todd, and that hasn't happened yet. So we're happy to sit down and review the whole situation.
sounds like the thing to do. Is there any way that we can help expedite that? I mean, a meeting between you guys? I mean, I know we're talking about at least 1, 2, Kevin would probably be
I don't,
I mean, you guys are busy. I know. I mean, I'm just trying to look at it to try to.
I think, again, based on what Kevin has told me, he was waiting for a call back from Todd.
Last I left with Kevin was to find a time last week, and I didn't set it up, and I thought maybe since here we all are, made a little sense to mention it now.
That's fine. We just didn't have an opportunity to prepare and gather
Okay.
all the information and be able to discuss it. And I'm not sure
Sure.
that
Okay.
that's a fair expectation.
I did mention to Tara, on the way in, if she would have said, no, let's talk about it privately, at another time, I wouldn't be saying anything right now. We could have met and done that.
I didn't say to you that it's your personal billing.
Correct. But you didn't say you'd rather discuss it not in this forum.
You chose to discuss.
I did, and
it
I'm happy to
before.
discuss it here, but
We just didn't have the opportunity to get prepared and have all the information
Okay.
available.
What was the late fee? I didn't understand that.
If it was a mistaken billing, why would you be charged?
Well, I think the township's maintaining it's not a mistaken billing. I maintain it is.
What is it?
I maintain it is. The bill should have been going all the time to the Esquire property management company, along with the sewer bills, you know?
Yeah. How would the township have had that information?
Well, then why aren't I getting the sewer bills too, I guess, for 54 units?
Somebody asked us to send it to a different place.
Well, I definitely asked, if not a phone call, I have it on here as of Wednesday, August 11th of last year, 2021.
We'll review that.
Thank you.
Hutch, don't we send bills to property owners that have management companies that manage their properties, that don't we, or just like sewer bills go to them, wouldn't these bills it'd be a part of that bill, wouldn't it?
Again, when we're requested to send it, when the owner requests us to send it somewhere else, we send it somewhere else.
Okay.
And again, as far as I know, at this point, Todd and Kurt are still the owners of the land, still the owners. The tax bill's going to them. That's the tax record that we use to generate where the bill goes.
Right, but the tax bill would always go to the property.
Yeah.
Right,
Property owner, yeah.
right.
Well, I thought the tax bill was for the 3 buildings that we have there as part of the HOA. Just
Yeah, because I mean, I live there and I get a tax bill.
For your unit.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the inside walls of the unit. You know, then there's the common, you know, the roofs, the sidewalks, the roads, the parking lot. That's all common area owned by the association, I guess, at this point. So that bill goes to them.
I guess the other question I have then, the buildings are clearly owned by individuals, they're deeded as such, that then why like the rooftops of those houses in that impervious area wouldn't have been sent to those people.
Because the exterior of the buildings is taken care of by the condo association, it's common area.
The roofs would be the responsibility of the individual owner, wouldn't it? No?
Not.
All the exterior is the responsibility of the homeowners association, that's common area.
That's what we pay in homeowners association fees. I mean, that's to cover those costs.
So if the roof had to be replaced, that's the association would pay. Must be different in different associations.
It can be.
Right.
Then you guys are going to try to
Yep, we're available.
get a
Yep.
time together to meet and resolve this. Sounds good. Any other business? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.